The UPMC sports medicine experts in Central PA are here to help keep you in the game and improve your quality of life, no matter your age or activity level. Visit upmc.com/Central PA SportsMed to learn more.
And we're back, everybody, for another edition of the Pennsylvania High School Football Report podcast. And I say we're back because we literally just did like over an hour yesterday, but we're recording this early ahead of signing day, which is December the 20th. We don't have the whole crew here today. It's just me and Dan Sostek. Dan, we didn't get to this part yesterday where I asked you how you're doing and how is everything going in life. And
well, that's because Eric Epler was too busy interrupting on his hotspot.
Second delay.
Yeah, he was on a 15-second delay, so he couldn't really say anything. I'm doing well. It's cold, really cold, but
yeah. Dan, I had an interesting day.
Yeah.
Put my wife on the podcast here. She's sitting over here watching me, but she took off for South Carolina this morning about 3 a.m. and 3:30 she was calling me. She thought she hit a bear, and when the cops got there, the cops said, well, if you hit a bear in Maryland, I got to go find it. And he goes, and about 10 minutes later, I'm on speakerphone going to get her. And he comes back and says, you didn't just hit any bear. That thing is a cow. He said, it's 350 pounds. He said, it's a very large black bear. She smashed her car. Could have been worse, but it's been an interesting day. There
have been a lot of bears. My family out in Montgomery County, there's been bear sightings at the malls there, which is
could be possible they're taking over.
Yeah.
I mean, they're at the malls.
Planet of the Apes, but with bears, we should delete this part from the pod and start writing the screenplay. We'll make $200 million.
I don't mess with bears. So.
No.
Someone's like, well, you should have got to meet. And I'm like, I can't eat a bear. A bear's like a fat dog to me. It's like a thinking thing. Like, I can't eat a bear.
Well, I don't know if you ever seen that documentary Grizzly Man, where it's all about the guy who befriends all the bears. And
that was
the end of the movie is him getting killed by the bears he befriended.
He didn't choose his friends wisely.
Yeah. It was,
God rest his soul, but I mean, Lord have mercy, people.
Yeah, I kind of got what you asked for.
We're not going to high five grizzly bears, okay? Let's just knock out the nonsense. Okay?
Yeah.
R.I.P. to the man. I hate it for him. But hey, look, we're talking signing day, and I mean, literally, as we're getting ready to come on here, Rico Scott tweets out, big tweet, over at Bishop McDevitt, standing in the hallway, and guess who's got his arm around him? Nick Saban is in Harrisburg today, December the 14th, putting the finishing touches on getting Bishop McDevitt's star wide receiver to come into town. And here in central Pennsylvania, I mean, heck, really Pennsylvania, I don't know anybody else to sign with Alabama. And when you sign with Alabama, I mean, no offense.
Is he the first one since probably Barmore, right?
It's been a while. I mean, you don't see many.
Barmore, Robert Foster. There's not a ton of them.
Yeah, when Nick comes up north, he's coming up here for somebody who's pretty darn good. Rico is that. Dan, when we did a story on him, I think his sophomore season, Jeff Wechter compared him to Deebo Samuel. I see some of those traits. I think one of the reasons he got the Alabama offer is supposedly he ran like a 4.37 at their camp. You've seen a lot of him. I think we probably both agree he's a kid who's still just kind of scratching the surface. What do you think about Rico Scott, man?
Well, I think we've all kind of talked about his progression, right? How he, in the state championship game as a freshman, he returns a kick, right? And basically off of one sort of move that he made, colleges kind of looked at it and said, that guy moves like a player. I think my alma mater, Pitt, was the first one to offer, then Penn State, then the SEC schools started coming. And that once the SEC schools started coming, you realize this kid must be testing through the roof. Then sophomore year comes with all those offers attached. And I think he would be the first to admit he didn't start his sophomore year the way he wanted to. It was kind of had some issues with drops. Admit he had some issues with confidence, but he really finished the year strong. Really helped, I think, having another guy like Tyshawn Russell across from him, who's been pretty good for South Carolina as a freshman. But he started to sort of figure it out. But I think this year was probably his best year as a receiver, but it also all goes back to kind of what we're talking about, which is before he got to high school, he was a running back. He was a running back that had to learn how to play wide receiver. And I think this was the year where you started kind of getting the sense that, oh, it's all really clicking for this kid, that this kid now, he can run routes. He said before he sort of knew how to run routes, but this year it's been a whole, another level. And I think that if there's one complaint you could have, it's that, maybe they didn't get him the ball enough kind of later in the year as the offense started to struggle a little bit more. And you talk about Deebo Samuel being a guy that Kyle Shanahan has figured out the most creative ways in the world to use. You kind of wonder if maybe that could have been like what got Bishop McDevitt over the hump the last couple of games, that they found a little bit better ways to get him the ball. Because when you watch this kid run, he is it's obvious why Alabama came calling. And it's obvious why it's not like hey, Alabama offered and I'm going to say yes. Nick Saban's coming to the school. That means they have big plans for him.
Yeah, and I do think he sort of built a little bit like Deebo Samuel. I think it was a good comparison. I think he can do some of those things you mentioned, his running back pass. I mean, they lined him up in the backfield first play against Cedar Cliff, and he went 88 yards this year on a handoff. I think he can do the jet sweeps and the quick screens, and then he can do the stuff down the field now too. So he's obviously the headliner here in Central PA.
And and I also think that I think sometimes when you get these receivers, right, it's just the way the nature of receiver is, right? The personality type can be a little bit, I don't want to say divish or kind of very sort of me first. And that has never been the vibe I've got with Rico Scott at all. He's a real, it sounds hacky and cliche, but every time I talk to him, he's deflecting, talking about passes stoned through to him. He's always just been he seems like he has a really good head on his shoulders too.
We wrote about it in the preseason. I'm in the preseason, he was coming off a 66 catch, 1,000-yard season last year. And, when we had him on the podcast 2 years ago, he was like, I'm playing terrible. I'm awful. And like last year, he's like, I was terrible. I was terrible. I'm like, you never see a guy who's got those kind of numbers saying that kind of stuff. But you see all the flashes, all the ingredients there. You understand why Alabama coming for him. And so he's the biggest name probably in Central PA, not probably, maybe probably the state,
in terms of offers.
Yeah. In terms of where he's going to be signing next week. We got a few more guys here in the mid-Penn, Anthony Robsock and Evan Bushong, two offensive linemen, big offensive linemen from Central Dauphin. Jair Rollison, the thief, probably a little bit undersized in some people's books at corners. Right now slated to go to Kent State. And then Chase Reagan, safety wide receiver from Bishop McDevitt, also slated to go to James Madison. And Nick Slogic, who's a tight end, defensive end type. I think East Carolina initially wanted him as a tight end, but he may end up at defensive end, also from McDevitt.
He might play, don't know what side he's going to play on. He's also going to play baseball there too. So two-sport athlete.
Yeah. He spurned your Pitt Panthers. I don't know how you feel about that.
Well, I mean, Pitt doesn't throw to tight ends ever, so it's probably a good decision.
You didn't offer him $100 handshake at the NIL bag. You didn't have the hookups with the NIL.
Listen, I barely can afford a Wendy's biggie bag. I can't even afford a Wendy's biggie bag. So
what is it? How much money's in the Pitt Collective right now? What do we got?
They actually have a decent amount of. They have a couple big donors. Believe it or not, when you're a big medical school like Pitt is, you tend to have some rich people that went there. So, and they've kept some guys, but. It would have been nice to see Nick Slogic hit some homers up there. We still get to see him on the baseball field too.
The Collective went out and got you a quarterback.
Well, no one knows anything about this stuff, right? I mean, talking to people
some people will get it, Dan. Hey, look, these James Madison guys, real quick. I think they're very interesting. Obviously, James Madison lost Signetti to Indiana.
Yep.
And then they brought in Chesney from Holy Cross.
Dickinson College grad.
I did not know that. You've educated me. I will give Ross Tucker, a friend of our podcast and occasional Twitter follower for some of the staff.
I think Ross follows me about 20 days a year, which I'll take. He's a former New England Patriot, so I'll take it.
I'll give him a props here. He said that, that guy at Holy Cross, it's 2 years ago, I think he told me that guy really should be getting good looks. And I think he's a good coach. Ross was really high on what he did at Holy Cross at the time. I don't know how he feels about him now, but that was 2 years ago. He told me that. And now he's at James Madison. James Madison has had an excellent program under Signetti. It looks like from when I've been talking to these guys, they're still on board with signing with James Madison. Two guys I like. I think, Bushong's a guy with some upside. And Chase Reagan, again, guys, if you just tuning in this podcast, he went down to Duke. He ran some 40 times that are legend, mythical. We don't know, look, we tried to verify him. Duke wrote him down like 4.27 or something like that, Dan. It was ridiculous.
But he backed it up this year. He was one of the biggest big play receiver DBs in the area. Like, if you're going to run that 40 time and then you come out the following year and go like 20 catches, 300 yards, I'm going to side on you. If you say you run that 40 time and you have a bunch of games that go for 3 for 100 with a bunch of 70-yard touchdowns, I'm going to start giving it some. I'm going to give you some. I'm going to defer to you. I'm going to say I think maybe it's true. I mean, he's always been impressive. I didn't get to see Bishop McDevitt more than once this year, honestly. But the games I did, he did look like one of the faster kids out there.
Yeah, well, I asked Wechter about it because it was really like a wow thing, because it was like up there with what some of the top 40 times from safeties in NFL would have turned in. So I called Jeff Wechter, McDevitt's coach, and was like, hey, what's up with these 40 times, man? And he was like, look, I don't know. They recorded that at Duke. That's what they said they got. All I can tell you is this. When we run on the field, he runs with Rico. He's right there with him.
I think when we asked for 40-yard times, I think McDevitt officially listed him at like 4.38, 4.39, something like that.
When he's run on the film, the kid can run.
Yeah, I think he was second fastest player in the mid-Penn per the listing, behind Nazir Fuller of Steel High, who was listed at 4.37.
It'll be exciting to see Nazir as a junior, but James Madison's pulled some good guys out of the mid-Penn here. Riley Rebel last year. I think they got a few other guys. Now they get these guys. And again, we don't, obviously college football's ever-changing landscape. You and I were talking about this yesterday. But I like those guys for them. Rob Sock going to Maryland. He's a long, lean, almost, I think, still kind of skinny lineman with a lot of upside.
He's one of those that are going to throw to the weight room, right? That's
I think his dad played college ball too. So, and then Jair Rollison he missed some games this year. I think he missed 3 or 4 games, but you look at the stats. He's not up there in stat leaders, but his film is like almost hilarious with
to me, corner is the position. I'm always kind of skeptical of stats to a certain degree, but corner is the one that I probably care about stats less than any other position, because I mean, to me, the best corner I've seen play, last 20 so years or whatever, is probably Darrelle Revis. I don't think that's my pit bias. I think that's a pretty fair thing to say. And Darrelle Revis never put up numbers. It's because no one threw his way, because guys weren't open when guys knew just not to throw his way. I think that's what happened with Jair. Jair's always been impressive to me. He's a real gamer. I think he set Bishop McDevitt's record for most career touchdowns on defense as well, which is considering that program's history impressive. I think Kent State's a great fit for him. I think that's a kid that's going to battle hard every single rep. And I could see him, Kent State playing a tough non-conference schedule, him having, a big pick of a big quarterback or something like that. He's a big game player to me, because I think when we talk about the McDevitt team this year and we talk about how they didn't make the state championships, it is easy to kind of forget the defense kind of played its butt off in those 2 games too. Like, the defense was state championship level. It was kind of the offense that struggled at the end.
If you watch this film though, he's savvy. Like, you see him, like I said, he calls himself the thief, and you'll see him like run up to like a pile and just snatch the football out and run with it and stuff like that. So, I like the kid. I think he was a little bit bigger. He probably would be going somewhere a little bit bigger, but if they can get him there, Kent State, I mean, that's a good get for them. I will say, an important programming note, people are probably wondering, hey, what about Alex Irby, the guy who is statistically the greatest quarterback of all time in Pennsylvania? He committed to Navy, and his brother, Andrew Irby, is an Ohio commit, Andrew Irby Jr. And from what talking to Alex yesterday on this Wednesday, December 13th, they're going to wait to February. There are a few things, obviously going to Navy, first of all, is a little bit different. I don't think they signed like letters of intent, but they got a few things that they're waiting on. And I'll be honest with you. I know he's a Navy commit, and I know Andrew's an Ohio commit, but to me, it's going to be interesting to watch after a year he had. That film gets out and circulates a little bit. These teams get into this signing day, come out. Maybe they didn't get the quarterback they wanted. It wouldn't shock me to see a few more teams try to swoop in and take Alex Irby away from Navy.
And not only that in terms of not getting the quarterback you want, it's also all the coaching staff changes, right? A coach comes in, you go from a coach that maybe wants a mobile quarterback to one that wants more of a guy that reads the field and kind of runs an offense the way Alex does. There's always different things you're looking for when you change staff. So he would definitely be a good ad. I think it'd be cool for him to go to Navy, just especially because you could turn the Navy Army game into a pretty much all PA quarterback battle in a couple of years with Mikhail Davis and Irby. So that would be pretty fun to have, especially how the Army Navy game always lines up with the state championships. That would be a nice little flavor there. But I think that's interesting. He's not committing.
The UPMC sports medicine experts in Central PA are here to help keep you in the game and improve your quality of life, no matter your age or activity level. Visit upmc.com/Central PA SportsMed to learn more.
Statewide, real quick, Quinn Martin's going to Penn State. The Bell Vernon athlete, 6'2", 200 pounds. I've seen people say he's going to be a running back. I saw he listed as safety on some other boards. I think safety may actually be.
He told me when I talked to him after the game, they're looking at him for offense. But he also said he's one of those kids that's very savvy. He's media trained already. He's going to be giving good interviews for our Penn State beat writers. When Quinn Martin gets there, he'll be giving you good sentences, full quotes because he's trained. But he said, they're telling me offense, but my body can change. My my how big I am can change. Just my mindset can change. I'm ready to do whatever they need. So I think he's willing to do anything. But he said running back.
He could even be a linebacker. I mean, he could be 6'2", 225, right? Playing linebacker. So
I just want to get these guys in there and see what they do. I think
you got Kenny Wosley coming from MOTEP to Penn State. Nice cover corner who even kicked a 30-yard field goal in the state championship win.
He can kick. He can really kick. He could be the next Dario Ogunbowale. When he makes the NFL, he can tell the special teams coordinator, I kicked in high school, and then kicker gets hurt, he kicks the game winner.
Couple big linemen, McDowell's Cooper Cousins, Wyoming's Caleb Brewer, who's really an athletic, bully out there in the field. And comes out of that same program that Javen Williams was out of. And I understood Javen Williams being a monster. He was our player of the year for the statewide. We took him as our player of the year last year in our All-PA team. But I understand he's, Caleb held his own against him. So I like the two big linemen there. Anthony Specca, too, the linebacker from Central Catholic. I know you have some experience talking to him, and he's kind of a big athletic linebacker. I think all the way around, pretty strong class for Penn State.
Yeah. Penn State's been kind of getting the guys they want, most of the guys they want from this area after a couple of years where it felt like the top guys were all going to Notre Dame and Wisconsin and Ohio State. It feels like Penn State had a really good class this year.
How about your Pitt Panthers? What are we looking at for them? And, look, we got to start with our guy, Jasir Whittington, who's been on the podcast now, I think, a couple of times. And really, we have a history there because when I did the player, I do the player rankings, and we really did not turn out those as much as we often do this year. But originally, Dan, I was the first guy to put Jasir Whittington at defensive tackle, and I can tell you that. And Jasir will tell you that because he messaged me and said, "Hey, I'm a linebacker," and I said, Well, talk to Coach Devin Johnson. I said, but I think you're going to be a defensive tackle. And sure enough, and he's a beast, man. And, he's probably a little undersized, a little short.
But let me tell you, I think that's why Pitt was so appealing to him, right? Because Pitt is Charlie Partridge, defensive line coach there. I think there's not a better defensive line coach in the country than Charlie Partridge. They have such a history of turning these undersized defensive tackles into stars. They've done it with Aaron Donald. They just did it with Kalijah Cansey. Just here, Whittington's that exact type of athlete. So I wasn't at the Ematep game. Eric Epler said he was the best player on the defense for that contest. So I think he's going to see the field early. If I have to guess.
You mentioned Cameron Lindsay, the linebacker from Aliquippa. He's a good football player heading to Pitt. Jules Goff, the running back from Central York. I like him a lot. I know you do too. You saw him play. And then you got the interesting quarterback from Penn Hills, Julian Dugger, who's 6'4", probably 210, can really run and do some interesting things, and is a good athlete.
Ty Uhas as well. And that's the thing. Pitt's never gonna have its pick of the litter in PA, but I think it kind of goes to show the depth of the talent in PA, where you can still kind of survive off of that second tier, because some of those second tier guys are guys that, when they get to college, they burst into that first tier. And that's why, there are all those kids, that end up at Western Michigan, like Sky Moore, guys like that. There's so much runoff talent. I mean, it's not Florida. Florida is the king of the runoff talent, right? Where there are 2 stars and 3 stars that, are just 2 stars or 3 stars because there's so much talent. It's so easy to get overlooked there. But Pennsylvania's pretty. It's a similar type thing, right? Where there are the blue chipper guys, but just because if you're a prospect and you get that 3-star, 2-star ranking on Rivals or 24/7 or whatever, it's not remotely over, because I think the proof is in the pudding that if you've kind of become one of those guys in PA that gets those looks, you've got a shot. The football's just getting better here each and every year.
You guys got Giovanni Cooley coming from Cathedral Prep too. He's an athletic lineman. I like him a good bit. And I will circle back real quick to Penn State. I like the wide receivers. Peter Gonzalez is a bigger frame guy who can run a little bit, from Central Catholic, and Tyser Denmark, who I think is a quick, short area, just really good route runner and with some explosiveness, who was an MOTEP this year. Both of those are Penn State guys. And then finally, the guy I really kind of liked the most, and I didn't mention him in the first time around Penn State, is Malachi Williams from Bonner Prendy, who's really kind of a quick twitch, fast, first step, athletic guy off the edge. Can't have enough of those. So I like all of those guys, Dan. We look at the top of the rankings. Another guy I really loved, and I love to watch his film, is Kevin Haywood, who is now, I think, listing himself as 6'8", 300 and whatever pounds. He's a monster. He's headed to Wisconsin.
And let me tell you, one of my things that people make fun of me for is I'm very big on having good names. Like there are just some guys that have good names for the positions they play. Kevin Haywood is just like a perfect name for a big, strong lineman. Like that is just,
go watch the huddle, guys. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's just that's a name that sounds like he could be straight out of the Iron Curtain Steelers or something.
Yeah, he's like the Andre the Giant of Pennsylvania high school football. He's just massive and just tosses guys all around. A few more names that I'll drop on here. Jason Cross, the safety from Bishop Canevin.
I really liked him for a couple of years.
West Virginia. I like him a lot. Another guy, again, we dropped his name on here. Samaj Jones is a Cincinnati commit, the St. Joe's Prep quarterback. I swear, I still think he looks a whole heck of a lot like Jalen Hurts.
Yeah.
So I think that's a great get for them.
Yeah. I mean, I think West Virginia, they've done really well in PA too. You look at, they might have hit gold with the best prospect last year that I think we all really liked. I don't know if any of us saw, the year Jaheim White had coming to the degree it is. That kid's going to be a borderline All-American in a couple of years. He's incredible.
I give his coach Russ Stoner credit. I know it's the down south in me when I start flapping my jaws there, Dan. I didn't mean to talk over you, but
Yeah.
Head coach Russ Stoner said, one of the things that makes him special is his ability to kind of run routes and catch the ball. And when you get those running backs who can not just be good running backs with vision, but they can get out in the flats and really make a difference in the passing game, those guys can be like special, and they can play a long time in the NFL when they get there. And I think Jaheim White's going to the NFL, Dan.
Yeah, I mean, and that goes to show you, right? I don't think he was. Everyone thought he was going to be a good recruit, but I don't think anyone saw this coming. So it is really, we are really at a point where the star rankings are just they're just that, right? They're just four like graphic images on a website. They don't really tell you what's going to happen.
The best offensive line film I saw this year so far, going through it all, as we built. By the way, our all PA team will be out by the time you guys see this. So but by the time signing day rolls around, so make sure you check that out on PennLive. That's our pick of, it's kind of like we try to pick the cream of the crop. The writers get into it and they do all classifications and a couple teams, and this is we look at all the classifications as one and pick one team out of it. One guy that's really jumping off on that lineman film though is Ryan Corey from Pine Ridge, on another Wisconsin commit. They got him. They got Kevin Haywood. They got Emilio Agard, who may be the best cover corner. I might take Wosley, but Agard's right up there with him from St. Joe's Prep. So another good year for Wisconsin. I think they might have Kamir Prescott too, the Newman Goretti safety. So good group for them. I think they did well here. And St. Joe's, David Washington going to Kentucky. Why is that big? Because Central PA Stone Saunders is headed to Kentucky, and David Washington is a special wide receiver, I think, who will be fun to watch him throw.
Kentucky's another one of those schools, right, that started to inch their way to PA. It began probably, I don't know if there were any before MJ Devonshire, but I remember that being kind of surprising, and they've kind of consistently had some grassroots here since then. So
Noah Rosahak, I'm sure I'm pronouncing your name wrong, Noah. I've messaged with him back and forth. The kid from Jim Thorpe, big lineman, 6'5", 270, headed to Syracuse. That kid is probably going to play offensive line for them, but he could be a really good defensive lineman too. Elijah Jones, the wide receiver for St. Joe's Preps, also headed to Cincinnati. And these are just kind of the commitments right now. Things could change. Michael McMonigal from over at York going to Maryland. I'm just throwing out some names, guys. The guys who I know are ballers. Jackson Pons is a kid from Norwin, athlete, 6'2", 185, Miami of Ohio commit, special player, I think, has been doing it for a couple years. Mario Landino, defensive end, Dan, from Emmaus. He was a James Madison guy who flipped over to
in IU,
Indiana. And so we talked about Mikal Davis yesterday too, Imhotep's quarterback, who I think has really took steps up. Anything else about this class statewide that you can think of, or anybody you want to mention? Any thoughts?
No, I mean, I think you kind of hit it, that just kind of the depth of this class. And I think it's going to be a couple classes like this, right? There's going to be a lot of guys in the next couple of years. I think PA football, in terms of producing that talent, it's always been good, but it feels like it's really becoming a priority state for a lot of these programs, and rightfully so. I mean, some of the cream of the crop is getting pretty good around here.
I love signing day because it's really, and I love covering recruiting. I think some of the old school reporters don't like it, and they especially don't like where it's going. But it's life-changing opportunities for a lot of these kids. And so we get this signing. This is the early signing period, and it used to be this happened in February. Now we have this one in December. So when you're watching this go down, guys, and we mentioned the couple of names in Central PA, and then Jake Hohenschelt, actually the offensive tackle at State College, is going to Holy Cross, where he was. I haven't talked to him since they had the coaching change. But when you're watching the coverage this week, keep in mind there's what was the normal signing days coming up in February, and a lot of the guys who aren't necessarily going to the big Division I powers like the Alabamas and stuff usually end up signing in February. And there's multiple reasons for that, and some of it is to see what these bigger schools get here in this early signing period, what they need. Some of these guys still might flush out some offers, but it's going to be a fun February, funner than most, I think, especially in Central PA. We've talked about this a lot, and before we go, I'll just say, Rail Caesar, we talked about him yesterday when we filmed the podcast wrapping up the season. He had over 100 catches, over 2,000 yards for Steel High. He's 6'1", 170 receiver. He's still out there. Bryce Sterritt's just got his first offer, Dan. I know you like him a lot, the big running back, Cumberland Valley, 6'1", 215. He had like 14, 15, 1,600 yards this year.
I just got off the phone last night with Ty Milheim's lower Dolphin. We talked about him a lot, but and he's one of those guys that I think we kind of it's kind of one of the more depressing parts of this time, I guess, time of year where it's kind of a what if thing, right? What if he got to play his full senior year? Because he was right on the verge of getting those FCS offers. He told me what we've been saying, and he just kind of confirmed. He said, my recruiting right now is kind of a little bit in a standstill because of the transfer portal, right? That he's coming off missing 7 of his 10 senior year games. And he's like, coaches are just more interested in getting guys in the portal right now than an injured guy coming off an injury. But yeah, he's another kid that I think he's waiting for that next chance as well. And I'll have a story kind of about his journey because that kid went through a lot this year.
We'll throw this a couple more. And we've done this before in other podcasts, but just in Central Pennsylvania alone, for instance, Mateo Crummel, kid at Central Dolphin, 5'11", 160 athlete.
That kid's a Division I in terms of pure like stuff, like the way you say a pitcher has stuff, right? When their fastball tails a little bit, the way he runs, he's got Division I stuff. I don't know if he's kind of a smaller guy with like the frame is kind of probably going to be one of the questions, but he beat really good corners to get wide open a lot last year. A lot. I think he's going to be a guy that will be playing at some Division I or FCS level.
McDevitt, safety, Nevin Hopkins is a guy who's, I think, explosive and can make plays on the back end. Marcus Quaker just got another, I don't know if Marcus, and I love Marcus. I think there may be some schools where he's a fit at quarterback. I think there's probably some other schools where he's maybe like a slot receiver or a safety because he can run really well and he's athletic.
I think Marcus Quaker, if we got to see him kind of let the hit stick go and not worry about playing quarterback, he would have been a physical safety, I think. So I'd definitely be interested to seeing that at the next level.
He's a guy that produced a lot. A guy, again, Antian Neal's a kid from CD East who's got the size, 6'1", 170, and the speed. I think he's flying under the radar a little bit. He's got an offer
to Xavier Armstrong.
Jayon Perry.
Yeah. Yep.
Xavier Armstrong, he's a little dog, man. We always loved him because it seemed like he was all over the place in the box, playing receiver, playing running back, wherever they needed him at CD East. He made plays.
Some football players for like PSAC level or a little bit above that are still well on the market.
Jayon Perry's a dog out at Steel High, 6'1", 175 guy who just, he moved into the box this year, played a lot of linebacker.
You know what his issue is? His issue is he refuses to talk about himself. That's something that I talked to Andrew Irby Sr. about that. He's like, yeah, that kid, he called him old school and said he's never going to be the one to, be tweeting about his highlights or talking about how good he is or anything like that. He just kind of goes out, lays the boom, does what he does in state championship games and moves on about his day.
So there'll be a lot of like really good. Sir Kane Venable, 6'5", 300-pound offensive lineman from Harrisburg. I don't think he's scheduled to sign here in the early period. There's going to be there's a lot of talent you can go out and get after this signing day. So like if you're looking at this and you're like, oh, well, I thought this guy was supposed to be so good, he's not signing right now. Well, there's a lot that goes into this. And another thing that Dan mentioned too is this just transfer portal. There's some like outrageous number of kids in the transfer portal, and I'm torn by that. I've talked about it before, Dan, and you and I talked about it too. Like, I think you ask kids to make these big decisions that really change their life at 15 and 16 years old, because that's what these are. They're life-changing opportunities. But if they get somewhere and it doesn't fit, I don't know how you really lock somebody in for the decision they make when they're like 15, 16, 17 and don't give them an opportunity to move. Now, on the flip side, it's hurting other 15, 16, 17-year-olds who would have had offers by now and don't. So I think it's still taking some figuring out. And I don't know what the answer is for that, but
yeah.
What you got, Dan? What's the answer?
My answer is that everyone should just be happy. I don't have don't have any. You think I have an answer to fixing the biggest problem in college athletics right now?
I'm trying to build up to the Pump the Brakes with Dan Sostek podcast. You guys stay tuned. I'm going to make this happen at Penn Live.
All right, here's my answer. It's that we just let these kids enter the NFL draft out of high school and start a minor league football league. But that's never going to happen. So,
guys, make sure next week you follow us along. We're going to have stories on all these guys. We're going to have photos. We'll have statewide stuff. We'll have Penn State stuff. Who signed where. Like I said, we'll have a story on everybody from Central PA and the mid-Penn who signed. We'll have photos from that. And signing day. Big time, Dan. I get excited this time of year. And then guess what? We got all our all-star teams coming out. December 25th for the mid-Penn. Said our all-PA team will be out next week. Big times at PennLive.com. Follow me on Twitter at Sports by B Linder. Follow Dan Sostek at
Dan_Sostek.
And stay tuned for the Pipe Dream podcast I have called Pump the Brakes with Dan Sostek, where we get him his own 15-minute a week.
It's like my Andy Rooney complaint corner.
Yeah, we're gonna have it's sort of an inside joke. We're gonna have Dan like take something that everybody thinks is really good and explain why it's really not.
Ice cream? I'm not a big ice cream guy.
There you go.
Yeah.
Flavored coffee though.
I'm drinking Folgers right now.
Okay. All right. That's a podcast, Dan. We'll see you guys after signing day, and stay tuned for our coverage, and then look at some of these kids who don't sign, and let's get them a college to go.
The UPMC sports medicine experts in Central PA are here to help keep you in the game and improve your quality of life, no matter your age or activity level. Visit upmc.com/Central PA SportsMed to learn more.